Well, hello, I'm Dr. Chris Lemmon. And for those of you who don't know me or don't remember me, I actually used to have a training center in Southern California for around 14 years. We work with human potential, being able to look at what influences us and what we can do about it and find some place of balance in life. And so we work together as a team of people. A few years back, when I started seeing the cultural change that we're now in the midst of, this is 2022, well, I put out a workshop called Surviving the Cultural Change, not knowing exactly how it would unfold and what it would look like. I put the class together. We did some interactive things online. Most of what I did was talk, which I do a lot of talking, but most I did was talk and express ideas. I answered a lot of questions for people, had some communications with people. So it was kind of fun. It was kind of interesting. Out of that, I got a sense of that it was going to unfold initially as a huge health challenge. Evolutionary change is something that occurs, is actually ongoing, but it kind of hits a threshold. It kind of goes up a hill, and all of a sudden we reach a peak, and then we wake up and we realize, oh my goodness, everything's different. I think that anybody goes back to where you were born. Say you haven't been around in your neighborhood for 40, 50 years, and you go back and you look around, you go, well, some of the landmarks are there, some are gone, things look totally different. Well, that's kind of what evolution does. And all of a sudden it seems to appear somewhat different, where our attitudes have changed, and now we're just noticing them. We all of a sudden have a recollection of how things used to be, and we wonder whatever happened, right? So surviving the cultural change has been a package that we threw that together. We threw it together. Okay. Anyway, for the most part, we did that. We played with that. I saw that was initially going to be a health challenge I mentioned. So I put together a program called Wellness Code. It was just some concepts and ideas that would help people get a grip on change and what you can do to restructure yourself to be doing something different when change comes down, which is much better just trying to accept it than being able to sit there and struggle with, like, I don't know what to do right now. Now, if you've got a protocol for doing something a little different, it opens up possibilities. So I started blogging about the whole issue of change. And then this year I've been blogging about range. Expanding that range out gives us an opportunity to maneuver and see where we're going to go, right? So along that theme, I put together, I've done actually several workshops just with, in a COVID world, it's been a little tough, but mostly advanced groups, people that I've known for a while. We've done a lot of chats online and so on and so forth. And so now I'm putting one out a little bit larger. I'm calling this working with patterns and pattern changes. I've done workshops already with patterns. Patterns is just everything with structures put together in some way, shape, or form with a pattern, right? And then when a state of something changes, normally we get a mood change. And then that pretty much, I believe that's a marker for a state change. If state changes, the traditional thing that we talk about is water can be a water vapor, or it can be frozen as ice. Most certainly when water starts to get cold, that most certainly is a change in its mood, and it starts to crystallize and become ice. Now, there's a lot of conversations about a fourth stage of water, which is really interesting and novel, and comes out from the state I'm in right now, Washington. So it's kind of fun. So there's a lot of innovation that comes out in the beginning of a business cycle change and towards the end of business cycle changes. And that's kind of where we're at in growth as a nation. Nonetheless, evolutionary change this time affects cultures, and it has, this time around, it has a really big effect on a lot of cultures, most of them on the planet. And so it's kind of a big deal compared to what we would have gone through in the past. I think most certainly they've all affected the culture in some way, shape, or form, but back in the tribal days, maybe not so much so. So here we are in the process of this, and it's like, how do we, I get a lot of calls from people. What do I do? How do I acclimate to this? What, I don't know what's coming down the pike. I can't figure out what to do. I don't know whether to sell or to move. My house is worth more, but I can't buy anything cheaper. So I don't know what to do. I get lots of questions. I got people that are out of work saying, I'm not sure what field to go into. Do I go back into the field I was in before because it collapsed and fell apart? Is it going to fall apart again? There are a lot of questions, right? And that is the nature of it. The questions are there because our stock of answers no longer works. That's it. We used to have a reservoir, a database of answers to all those questions, and we could all put it together because we're really all pretty smart. We survived a long time on this planet. We're pretty smart. So all of a sudden, we've hit this wall of like, I don't know what to do. All right. So we, that myself and staff and students have been doing this for a long time. We have, a whole bag full of tricks to play with. And so we're going back to the very nature of this way the structure is put together, and that is the patterns. They're unconscious patterns. Do they get augmented? Yes, they get augmented. My background was originally in psychology. We used to call that the real self and the false self. But for the most part, it's just a pattern response that we learned or we developed. Sometimes you can look at them as being kind of, I won't say learned from family. I would say influenced by family and culture, because that's your first interaction. When you're born, it's kind of like you're an open book. And it's not that you don't have responses already learned in there, because it appears to be that way from the testing we have. So in a group of a family of 5 or 6 kids, they can all have different characteristics. Most certainly that's it. All those characteristics are to some degree influenced by the culture and the family and the environment of what it sits in. And so then we see those influences sitting on top of these patterns. Cultural change is a huge influence sitting on top of everybody's patterns. I'm not sure that we have an answer of what we can do. I think we have an opportunity here. And the opportunity is really very simple. We just go back and we take a few patterns that we run. You don't have to really know anything. But to do this, you're probably going to need to have a friend or a partner. As a matter of fact, I don't think you could do it without a friend or a partner, right? So if you and your friend will get together, what I have done, I have picked. This is not a massive thing. If we looked at all patterns, we'd be looking at, 300, 400 hours of class material to study all that stuff. It's way too intense. We don't need to have all that. And all of that's changing anyhow. But we already have the patterns engaged. What I'm proposing is that we take a little matrix of those, a grouping of those that I'm going to call defining pieces in the idea of self. Just going to take a handful of them. We're going to sit down with a friend, interact a little bit, open that up and observe. Just observe. You don't do anything, nothing to do. Just make observations. Find someone that you can sit with and you go back and forth and observe. You don't even need to really comment. You just want to have the experience. It's kind of like you can read a book on riding a bike, but you have to get on a bicycle some point in time to be able to get a sense of what that balance is like. That's really like the whole secret is finding that balance point, right? And the rest of it is working the pedals, turning the wheel. That's pretty simple, but finding the balance. So in these, if we refresh them, if we just open them up, you're going to find a balance point in them, just like riding a bicycle. Yeah. And we need to do them a couple of times because like riding a bicycle, you fall down a couple of times, you put your foot down or you struggle a little bit until you feel it. So we need to do these for a week or so with a friend. We need to sit down and spend 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes, a half an hour a day, 3-4 days a week with a friend and go back and forth and play with these, not trying to figure anything out. Don't try to figure anything out. Just open it up and find the balance point. That's it. When you open it up and find the balance point, what these type of programs do is then they start to update. They don't update in 10 seconds. They update over a couple of months. They start to then gather more information. These programs pretty much when they get set, they stay intact. They don't necessarily update because things are pretty much redundant being a human, right? Except at evolutionary times. And then everything starts to change as the background changes. I can change the background picture or not. During evolution, the background picture changes. So this is exactly what we're running into. Then it's hard to make choices. Things look unfamiliar, right? So we just need to open them up one at a time. I put together just seven patterns. So we're really looking at 7 different steps. You could do it maybe in 7 weeks if you had a friend and you both had some skill set. Skill set requires ability to be able to sit down and really make that other person important for a moment. Lose the idea of I am. Put it aside for a second. We call that an entrainment. You just move that aside a little bit. You don't become that person. You don't run their ideas through you. You don't do any of that kind of stuff. You just kind of relate to them. The same way you would if a friend came to you and said, I got this problem. I need some help. And they tell you their story. You relate to them. You might say yes. You might say no. You relate to them. You at least listen to them. You make their issue, which is totally relevant to you, important enough for you to listen to. And then you can make a comment back. But that's all you really need to do. We open that up and we let that flow. It's really very simple, right? I put together an introduction that kind of gives you a sense of it, about 7 pages, I think. And then I've got 7 classes. So the classes are set up with some introductory information about the particular patterns. These are not patterns you're going to see, at least not at first, but you will feel. So when you're in training with a person, you'll notice like, wow, they act a little different under these circumstances. We just threw out a scenario, an exercise, and sitting here, I'm feeling things a certain way. And then when I feel you, it's like, wow, you're reacting totally different to this than I am. We've all seen this in life, right? I mean, we've all seen that accident scenes, crises, things going on. We've seen that over and over again. So it's like, wow. So as you open that experience up, you then refresh, you get more information. The database builds up, updates itself. You don't have to do anything. It's really quite simple. Other than the fact that you're probably going to have to repeat the exercises several times, the more the better, right? So this is going to be an online program. Initial package is, I'm not going to just send this out to all kinds of people because they may not even want any part of this. I'm going to send this little piece out here as an introduction. If you're interested in this program at all, send me an email and say, hey, send me the first class so I can find a friend and see if I can sit down and work with someone on this. Exactly what I will do. I will send you the introduction and the first class. The very first class, no problem, no charge. If you want to do this, then what you're going to wind up doing is paying. This always costs money, right? It's paying me. And so we'll do that on PayPal and you can go ahead and then sign up for the class. At that point, I will send you then, when I get your PayPal payment, I will send you the other 6 classes, all structured very, very similar to the first one. They all kind of stair step on top of each other. Each one kind of massages the one below it and starts to build a structure, kind of like working with Legos. It all builds together. As you start to play with these, you'll start to notice, wow, this first one, because you went a certain direction with it, really influences how the second one stacks on it, and then how the third one stacks on it. Some of these are pattern response. Some of these are strategies. We don't want to get into all the data that goes along with these. We're just going to utilize them. That's all. We're not going to figure them out. There's way too much information in there. We're going to go back to really simple. When I go back to simple, like I did in And surviving the cultural change, why I went back to some of Bateson's writings. So I'll use a few quotes from Gregory Bateson, just because the fact that that man went through this experience over 30 years of his lifetime, learning these, recognizing these. No, he didn't author all the books and material. There's lots of psychologists and different people out there that wrote books on it. But the idea started unfolding through his work. So he was kind of like the grandfather of the program, so to speak. He's now long gone. But most certainly, I was very inspired. I got very inspired by his material. And from there, I went into lots and lots of books and material. I've never taken any classes, but I have taught a lot of class. We used to teach a class that was a weekend, Friday night, all day Saturday, all day Sunday, called Harmony. We played with patterns by having you sit and reflect on someone and mirror their pattern. And we did that so that you could get into harmony with the different way people do things rather than in judgment of the way they do them, right? Recognizing they think and operate differently sometimes is very beneficial. They're not you, right? We often think that everybody thinks the same, honors the same as we do. And then we get frustrated because we think we're right, and that's not necessarily true. So this starts to open up those gateways. This is all about opening up range. And so this is an opportunity I'm throwing out for exactly that. My blogs all this year from January forward have been on range, and it will continue the rest of this year. I have no idea what we'll do next year, but at least we have taken some action, moved forward somewhere to adapt to the changes that are occurring, not knowing what the changes are, but at least being open to the sake of those changes, if that makes any sense. It should be a fairly easy process. Once again, I'm sending this out to everybody that I got in my database. If I don't hear back from you, I won't bother you anymore. Really simple. If I hear back from you and say, yeah, send me the first free class, I'm going to look around to find a friend. If this works for me, I'll get back to you. That's it. That's all I'm asking, right? If it works for you, you get back to me, and then we'll start to negotiate. The cost of the whole thing is $50. I will then put out talks. As the classes unveil, I'll put out a little talk online to kind of explain. Yes, I'm going to send you 3-4 pages with each class, but I'm going to do a little talk about them. What makes this current is because as the classes unfold, people will be feedbacking to me with questions and things. And that way the talks will update my written material. So it'll answer questions. So it may facilitate your process with your partner in playing with these. So if that's making any sense to you, or if you don't want to do anything and just kind of wait this out and see where it's going to go, it's all right. But it's like lots of surprises in the world. Who would have known back in the summer of 2019 or 2018 how this thing is going to unfold? No idea, right? We could see things unfolding. It was getting turbulence in the weather and the politics and everything in the world, and the financial condition, the wealth gap. There's lots of different markers that were good indicators that things were changing, but nobody had an idea. And now we're in the midst of it, and I'm not sure that we still have an idea. I'm getting some philosophizing pieces rather than the critical polarity pieces. People criticizing everything as like doing it wrong. Now I'm seeing people that are starting to philosophize, and they're trying to find a balance between the two. Now that's a really good sign, I think. So a few people are starting to come out and write and said, well, that didn't work and this didn't work. Maybe we need to find some middle ground. Maybe we need to do. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get a sense of balance. We're trying to notice what influences you, what's driving you. And is it driving you crazy right now? Well, maybe we need to step back a little bit. We need to just move back a little bit and be able to get an assessment. It's not the way it used to be. It's not going to be the way it used to be. Forget that. I'm not sure how it's going to be. And I don't think any of you know for sure. You may have designs and desires, but that's just normal for humans, right? So let's just engage. Let's play with it. Let's see where we can go with it. It's just sets of really simple patterns. I'll explain them a little bit. You sit there and you feel someone's response. Push, pull, left, right. You don't have to know a whole lot. Just experience it. Finding that balance. Notice what they do. Opens up a lot of gateways. You start to feel things. All right. So if that makes sense, and this is something like, hey, Chris, you crazy old fart. Sure. Sounds good. I'll go ahead and go on with this time. Okay, that's great. Send me an email and I most certainly will send you that first class so that you can try it out. And if it's something you want to do, we got a deal going. I am also open to questions. So if you have any questions, go ahead and email me, chris@wizardscatch.com. That's WIZARDSCACHE.com. That's my blog site. And so you can look at some of my blogs to see what I've been doing. If you've not looked at them, that's great. And so we're looking at it's time to do something, right? Doing something may be better than doing nothing, and most certainly better than being a victim to your own judgment, let's yet other people's judgment. So let's engage a little bit. Let's have some fun with this. I'm not sure that this is going to answer everybody's questions, but most certainly we need to have some type of movement. Balance comes from the need for us humans to have movement. So if we move, we don't want to fall down. We need to really get a sense of balance. We are moving forward. We better find that balance. All right. So on that note, why, thank you very much for listening to this craziness that you got unsolicited and sent to you. But if you would like more information, feel free to respond to this and we'll go from there. All right. So thank you very much. Bye.